Welcome to This Week in the PNFL. I am your host, Mark Hill, and as usual, we have the two greatest co-hosts here. We have Mitch Grawl and Dean Chambers. How you doing, gentlemen?
Doing
Good.
great.
Doing great. Had a good weekend?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this was a rough week in the PNFL this past week. A lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
teams had some pretty rough going in this weekend's games.
Oh, yes, I know. I was one of them. But we will, you'll hear my whining story a little bit later on. So, all right, we're going to get this thing, we're going to jump right into it and get it kicked off real quick. So, starting the first game that we had this week was San Francisco going down to Atlanta and taking that game 20-14. Mitch, what did you see in this game?
Well, I tell you what I saw was a bunch of fumbles. Is what I saw in this game, Mark. It was fun to watch. If for those who might not have caught it, we have the replay on the PNFL network that you all can catch. But a lot of turnovers, a lot of excitement. Yeah, San Francisco took that game 20-14. But yeah, I mean, that was, gosh, you just have to watch it. I think Atlanta, and besides missing a field goal, I think gave San Francisco their longest run on a couple of fumbles where there were scoops and almost scores by the San Francisco defense. But statistically, take out the turnovers, and it was a pretty good looking game. But I just want to say that's the way the ball bounces sometimes. But I think Atlanta will rebound and be ready for next week.
Yeah, I agree. It was you're talking what, five fumbles total for the game between both teams. Strangely enough, no interceptions. Huh. All of them were fumbles. So interesting. All right, moving on down to the next game, we have Green Bay at New York, and Green Bay just they walked the dog on New York, 35-14. Dean, what happened to New York in that game?
Well, New York was looking pretty solid early in the game, primarily the first quarter. And then the tide just turned, and the momentum went the other way, and it was all Green Bay for the rest of the game.
Mm.
And I didn't expect that. I thought the Giants would be prepared for this and would win. But again, we talked about Green Bay last week. Which Green Bay team is going to show up when they come to your stadium? Are they going to be the really solid Green Bay team, or the Green Bay team that doesn't look so solid? And we definitely got our answer in this game.
Well, looking at the turnovers, we mentioned it in the previous game that was played. There was Green Bay had four fumbles. They lost two. They were intercepted once. New York was intercepted twice, and they had one fumble and lost one fumble. I think that played a big role in it. But despite those fumbles and the interceptions, Green Bay still found a way to win.
Yeah, well, that's three turnovers at each team, but I think at the end, Green Bay just sustained offense more effectively than the Giants did.
Yeah, I agree. Normally, you don't have that many turnovers in the game and end up winning. Normally, with that many turnovers, you end up losing it. So they managed to pull that one out. So big surprise. Next game on the list, Anaheim at New Orleans. Another team that just went in there and just walked the dog on them. Mitch, go ahead and take this one.
Oh man, tell you what, people were laughing when I said don't overlook the Rams when they started out, slowly this year. But I tell you what, when the Rams offense, when they're clicking, they put up some points. And you can remember that last year towards the end of the season, that Carolina team before they moved out to Anaheim was winning some big offensive showdowns. So this week, 5 touchdowns for Josh Dobbs. We haven't seen him look that good in a long time out there. I think this is back-to-back weeks for him having big games, and he won Player of the Week. And so, Again, this is another game where turnovers, this is a turnover week in the PNFL. 5 turnovers combined for both teams, but Anaheim didn't care. They just went out, put up points, and you know what? They're going to keep marching, and I think they're going to be a big player in that the NFC West.
Well, you mentioned about the turnovers and number of turnovers you've seen so far this week for the past week's games. Do you think everyone was really trying to buckle down on their defense and they definitely overachieved on it with all the turnovers that has been going on?
Maybe, but I know a lot of the games this week. I can't remember the New Orleans. Well, no, because that would have been in the dome. But I know a lot of games this week seem to have rain. And whenever we have rain, there always seems to be a higher number of turnovers. But this is in the dome, so I have no answer for you. I don't know.
I don't know. Someone probably put butter on their hands this week, so I don't know. Okay, my bad joke. Okay, moving on. Next game. This was a good one. I think we kind of called this one during the preview last week. New York at Chicago, and New York eked this one out 32-21. Dean, I think you called the Jets on that one too. What's your take from it?
Thing number one, there were 7 turnovers total in this game. I mean, this is a matchup between what some think are the best 2 teams in the league, and between the two of them, they turned the ball over 7 times. Now, as I watched this game, the two teams battled back and forth, and at one point late in the game, Chicago had a 31-26 lead, and they were driving. And I thought, my prediction is going to be wrong. Chicago's going to win this game. And then you had that last turnover. Well, not the last turnover, but you had a turnover. And the Jets got the ball. I mean, at that point, I think Chicago was about on the verge of scoring. The Jets got the ball. They marched back downfield the other way and went up 32-31. I think they went for a 2-point conversion and didn't get it, if I remember right. But that's a huge momentum swing between possibly Chicago scoring again and basically taking control of the game and probably winning it, turning the ball over. The Jets go the other way and score a touchdown, and that ended up deciding the game. Then I think the last Chicago possession, Sam Darnold threw an interception, and that finished it.
Yeah, I think that was pretty much how it went through on the game. But yeah, the seven turnovers. I did not expect that from either one of those teams because those guys are usually the top tier. I was thinking to be a little bit lower scoring game than this, but this game was entertaining nonetheless. So, despite all the turnovers,
If I remember right.
Excuse me.
I think it was raining in that game as well.
I believe it was also. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, there was a lot of turnovers this week. Okay. Next game, Indianapolis at Washington, and Indianapolis went in and took that game 12-7. Mitch.
Oh man, I tell you what, let's give a round of applause to Coach Hoover and his Indianapolis Colts for win number 1 on the season against the undefeated Washington Redskins. And you know what? This was one of the rain games, and we always know that Washington typically has trouble in the rain. This time, no different. A slop fest to say the least there. 12-7 game. Oddly enough, probably one of the games that only had 1 turnover in the game, but neither team could really muster up much offense, but Indianapolis was able to push through. And I tell you what, Jalen Waddle, he didn't win player of the game, but he was the reason why Indianapolis won this game. 101 yards receiving. He played a fantastic game there and paid his best to Keyshawn Johnson, just saying, "Give me the ball." And so, congratulations, Coach.
Yes, definitely. Congratulations. Great win. I think we all pretty much had Washington picked on that one. So definitely a great win by them. So maybe they are starting something new. So we'll see what happens next week. So
And
next,
start Kyle Allen.
yeah, start. He still hasn't started Kyle Allen, huh?
No.
Nope, he's still running with Love. Okay.
That's right.
All right, next game. I knew this was going to happen. I knew they were going to get off the schneid. New England goes down to L.A. and they win this game 33-23. You know, before you get started on this one, Dean, I've noticed the visiting teams have just been coming in and just beating these guys up, beating us up this week. Anyway, just something I just observed. Go ahead and take this one, Dean.
Yeah, I'm noticing that too. And in this game, New England jumped to an early lead, and okay, the Chargers are going to make a comeback and ultimately come back and win this game. And every time the Chargers answered, the Patriots had an answer to that and scored, and they stayed ahead. It's not exactly what I expected, but I can't say it's entirely surprising. I guess the big difference is New England continues to improve on offense. I mean, they're 397 yards passing and 144 yards of rushing. That's pretty solid, good balanced offense. 36 minutes and 12 seconds time of possession.
Yep.
And they played good enough defense to keep the Chargers from scoring, from matching them.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with it. I knew that eventually, that they were going to end up winning a game and getting themselves straightened out. L.A. is kind of reeling right now with their record. They won last week, but they're starting to reel a little bit. So,
and it's interesting that the teams that were 0-4 this past week won a game, and all of the undefeateds have fallen except for the Jets. And now that is a battle of two 4-0 games, 4-0 teams. So one of them had to still be undefeated.
Yep.
Unless it was a tie.
Exactly, that was a tie. So
some of the teams that didn't win yet won a game, and some of the teams that were like Washington that were undefeated lost the game. Both of those things took place.
Yep. So, and now there's only one team standing. So, question is who's going to try to push the king off the hill for a little bit. Good question. Next game, Minnesota playing Detroit, and Minnesota ended up winning that game 22-3, only holding Detroit to 3 points. Dean.
Yeah, that's not unexpected. Minnesota had been struggling with some of those games, so you knew that they were going to come back. Detroit has been struggling, to say the least, and so it doesn't surprise me that even though the game was played at Detroit, Minnesota played very, very solid defense, holding them just to a field goal, and played well enough on offense. And once again, the turnovers were an issue. Minnesota had three interceptions that they overcame to win this game.
Yeah, they had 3 interceptions. Detroit had 1 interception, and they had 1 fumble. So a little bit bounced on both ends. But yeah, that was I don't know. I may be putting Detroit on the watch list. I did not think Detroit was going to lose this one, or I thought they were going to put
up from Detroit, the player of the game, when they lost.
Say again now?
How is a safety from Detroit the player of the game when Detroit lost?
Yeah, you know what? I've asked this question several times, and I've had conversations with Mitch that asked the same thing. How could that happen?
2 picks. I think it just measures picks and sacks so much higher when it comes to these player of the weeks for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we know it wasn't going to be Tua since he had 1 touchdown and 3 picks.
Yeah, that's true.
It wasn't going to be that.
Yeah, we knew that wasn't going to be the case.
That's right.
All right, next game. Oakland, again, another team that went on the road and won. Oakland played Jacksonville, and they ended up eking this one out with their 2 touchdowns, 14-13. Dean, what'd you see?
What I saw there is that Jacksonville played much tougher in this game than I expected. And even though they scored 2 touchdowns, I think the Oakland offense still struggled a bit. and it led to a very close game. And if I remember right, Oakland had to score fairly late in the game to nail down this win. If I remember right, I think it was 13-7 Jacksonville leading, and I wondered if Jacksonville was going to hold on and ultimately win the game. But that last touchdown was, of course, decided it.
Yeah, that was very. I was expecting a much higher scoring output by both teams. Kind of interesting that we didn't see those numbers out there. I don't know if that would lend to just being them playing good defense. So
Total yards offense for both teams below 250.
Yeah, that's. I don't think that doesn't happen. I know it doesn't happen that much with Oakland, and Jacksonville is like, I don't know. I was expecting at least around 300 to say you're having a good game.
Efficiency 43% for Jacksonville, 40% for Oakland.
Yeah, that's it right there. That's very well. So next game. Oh, wait a minute. Last game. Hate to mention it. The one of the few teams that went on the road and lost. Seattle went to Denver, and Denver ended up taking that one in the fourth quarter, 10-7. Mitch.
Yeah, I think actually the only home team to win in Week 5 was Denver. So congratulations to Seattle for being a part of history there this weekend. When you look at this game, I mean, Denver's defense. I mean, come on, we know that Denver's defensive coordinator is always strong, so not a surprise there. Seattle always is going to keep these games fairly close to the way they play. So, I figured Seattle would win by 10, but hey, stuff happens, right? So I'm sure Seattle will bounce back.
Yes, I'm sure they will. All right, so that wraps up the Week 5 games. Great games are played by all the teams. Couple blowouts there, but I think overall, besides the fumble fest that we pretty much had, was pretty much a good week all around. And yeah, I think that they were. Yeah, Denver was the only team to win this week. Only home team to win this week. Oh boy, Seattle only had one job. That was it. Just one job. So, as we wrap up on that segment, we're going to move on to the next one. As you guys know, that one of the things that we noticed over the past weeks was some numbers that players that were injured, and they seem to be miraculously healed. So, during our pre-show, we had a discussion about how substitute players or players coming off the bench, how does that affect the game or affects the team's gameplay? And I want to try and take a little moment where we can sit here and kind of discuss this. So for either one of you guys, let's have Dean start this time off. What is the opinion that you think the substitute players and their attributes play in the game, and how it affects the team when they're planning their games, profiles and such, or if someone goes down during the game, how it affects the gameplay?
I think it very much depends on the position or what kind of depth you have. Like, for example, in my team, the starting center was injured a few weeks ago, and I think it was a 3 or 4 week injury. And I put him on an I slot, and then I had a guard that was on an I slot who I then activated as like the fourth guard. So I figured at that point, for depth purposes, the additional guard was like a backup center, and guards are rated pretty similar to centers. So I didn't think it made much of an impact on my team, that injury. And the second center that I have is pretty close to almost identical to the starting center that was injured. So I didn't think it made any difference. But if you look at the quarterback injury that the Detroit Lions suffered, that had more of an effect. When you have a backup quarterback who may not be as good,
right,
start for a couple of weeks and you struggle your team struggles at that position, that makes more of an effect. So I think it really depends on how much depth and what kind of depth we have at the various positions. I mean, even if you have like a kicker or a punter injured, you sign a free agent if you have to. It probably doesn't make a huge impact. If you have 8 cornerbacks active on your roster and one gets injured, it might diminish your quality a little bit, but your other 7 guys are probably still going to pick up the slack.
Right.
Um, if you're like weak at linebacker, you're like 2 good linebackers and the rest of them are mediocre, and one of your really good linebackers gets injured, that would have more of an impact, I think. So it really depends on the position. As the ratings get more differentiated, it's going to have more of an impact because then we're going to see situations where the backups are more of a drop off than the starters, and injuries will have more of an impact.
Yes, I agree.
Just
Now,
in theory.
what is your okay, Mitch? So I'm gonna ask you the same question, but I'm gonna ask you to answer that question like Dean did, but also the next question after that's gonna be if you're game planning or if you're strategizing or setting up your roster, how would you set that out if you know your starter guys are good? I guess how would you set that up so you can play him and your say if your starting guy goes out and you put someone in his place, he's not going to be at the same stat level if it's the number 4 or the number 5 linebacker. So what are some of the things to look out for when you try to strategize that to kind of minimize if you have such a large drop off between your top tier player and your second tier players?
Yeah. Well, one, I agree with Dean. It does matter. I think on the position, right? Particularly if it's a position where you have multiple players um, from position group playing, like say you have multiple wide receivers on the field or multiple linebackers, what have you. And maybe not as big of an impact versus if you had your starting quarterback out. But also too, this is where I think let's we have to be honest with ourselves, right? When you look at our rosters, and as Dean mentioned, we are beginning to see more differentiation built into our drafts, which I'm very much happy to see. But even right now, if you go and compile your weightings of ratings and rosters, and put them on that. Put them in the scouting report utility. Our team with, say, the best wide receiver position group and the team with the worst wide receiver position group, I mean, you might be talking about a 2 or 3 percentage point difference, right? So, I mean, it's not massively different, but I think where you do see those differences play out is when, let's say, you have a team that, yeah, the ratings aren't that wide between the top receiver and the bottom receiver in the league. But what if you have a team that has 4 or 5 wide receivers that are kind of below that league average? Then yeah, I think the rating system or the ratings will impact those differences because they're going to go against teams likely with cornerbacks that have a much higher than average league rating system. So those gaps do happen. When it comes to injuries, if your roster is not at or above that league average, then you probably will see a much wider variance in your outcomes versus if your roster is made up of players that are, say, in that upper 3/4 of the field. How to combat that? I think with my team, I know. So, for example, if I have a top linebacker that gets hurt, and I know that, say, the extra linebacker I might move up on the roster is nowhere close to being as good as this linebacker, I actually might decide to keep an extra linebacker inactive and activate an additional cornerback or activate an additional safety and maybe play more defensive back heavy. Play a different little style with more defensive backs versus linebackers. Because the thought is, as well, would you rather have a better rated cornerback versus a lower rated linebacker, something like that. So, similar thing on offense too. I might switch a tight end out with a wide receiver, vice versa, and maybe change up some of the play calling that I do to match that. So those are a few of my thoughts on this topic, Mark.
Okay, now Dean, do you agree or you have a different take on that as far as the strategy for that?
I generally agree, but I want to comment on one thing you said. When we're looking at like groups of players, you mentioned one team having maybe the best wide receivers in the league and one team maybe being ranked 18th. I think we all have different views on what we even. I know there's scouting reports you can do that, but we have different views on what makes them better or worse. And I was looking this past week just out of curiosity. I happened to notice the wide receivers that Detroit has, and it kind of raises interesting questions about this because when you look at his wide receivers on speed, they're 82, 78, 78, 79, 80, 82, and 83 in that order. Those are their actual speed ratings. But when you look at them, most of them, they're pretty solid on acceleration. They're all mostly like 90s and 91s on agility. And they're all 96 or 95 hands. As a matter of fact, the top 5 are all 96 hands. And they're all pretty high in endurance as well. You know, there's a lot of 90s and 91s on endurance here. So you can see that this makes it look like he's looking for wide receivers that are like maxed out in pretty much everything but speed. And that's kind of going against the grain of what a lot of our GMs and team owners are putting a pretty heavy focus on speed in the wide receivers. So what will be interesting about this is to look at this group of wide receivers and see how they actually perform in games versus what we're seeing from other teams that maybe put more emphasis on speed.
So what do you think is more important? I mean, do you look more when you're, for example, do you look more at speed or do you look more at acceleration? I tend to look at all of those together, but I've been leaning more towards the acceleration and the agility aspect, and also add in, your endurance and that type of stuff. But I think the acceleration and agility is how fast can they get off the line? How fast can they make that cut? Because they can make that cut quicker than that defender. Now he has a chance to be open much quicker. And if the quarterback has the proper high enough discipline numbers, he'll see that and then throw the ball to him. So do you look more at the speed, acceleration, or agility in your determinations?
Right. And keep in mind the endurance impacts all of those. So lower endurance players are going to fatigue more quickly. And, in the second quarter and later, it means that their ratings in those first 5 skill ratings are going to be lower in the ratings that they actually play by. I don't know if you've ever, years ago, I looked at a game where I watched the game and for some reason had it in that mode where you can actually like manually substitute and do things like that. And it shows their actual ratings that they're actually on, that they're playing under. And those ratings are a little bit lower than what you see on the roster. And that's because of endurance. And the players with lower EN, those actual ratings that they play by are even lower. And it gives you an idea of how important the endurance is to the overall quality of players.
Okay, that's definitely what
play style. There's certain plays that you would use where you're going to send wide receivers deeper and you want more speed and acceleration. And then there are plays like, for example, those KC slot plays. You ideally want a guy that has like 91 agility and high hands to get open and catch those plays. So part of it in balanced offense will use some of each. You can't just throw the ball deep all the time. Defenses will cover that and shut you down.
Yep, I agree. So as we're coming to wrap this segment up, Mitch, do you have anything you want to do to put a little bow on this?
Yeah, I prefer strength in my wide receivers. Strength and discipline. No, I think that's one of the good things about creating more differentiation in all of our positions and the ratings is because, for a while, I mean, let's just call it for what it is. Just about every wide receiver up and down our rosters were 83, 84 speed, were 94 to 96. I'm going to say 84 to 86 accelerate. I mean, it was almost cooking. Now, even on my roster, I've got a couple of wide receivers that I drafted here this past year that I had graded very high, but I was able to draft them a little bit later in the draft because their speed was 80 and 81, but everything else is just about maxed out. And so, we'll see how it goes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. That was very informative and definitely get a lot of information on that. So moving into the week 6 games, just from looking at it, I think there's some pretty decent games I see on the docket. So we're going to go ahead and get this kicked off. We're going to start with Dean on this. You have the Lions going in to play the Raiders, and the Raiders have a 10.5-point spread. What are your projections on this game?
It sounds like a high spread, but I'm actually predicting that the Raiders are going to cover. Detroit is struggling a bit, and I think the Raiders will want to make some improvement, make some progress in their offense, and I think they'll do that. And I think we'll see that 10.5-point spread get covered, and the Raiders win this game at home.
Okay. Next game, Redskins and the Falcons. They are giving the Redskins 9.5 points. Mitch.
No way that Washington covers 9.5 in this game. You look at these two teams, statistics wise, pretty similar, to be honest with you. Top 3 and 4 in the league in passing. They're kind of middle of the pack when it comes to stopping the pass, when it comes to rushing. Both are in that upper third, if you will, and rushing. And if Washington does stop the run better than Atlanta does, but other than that, I think very similar. But I think Atlanta is going to at least get within that spread. I'll go with the Redskins to win, but I think the Falcons are going to keep it much closer than 9.5.
Okay, so a much smaller spread. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, next game, Cardinals and the Saints. The Cardinals have a 17.5-point spread. Dean.
I think we're going to see an upset here. I think we're not just going to see that the Cardinals don't cover the spread. I think the Saints are going to win this game at home outright and pull out the upset.
Okay, that's a tall order, and I think the Saints are. I think they might pull it off. I think I'm gonna stay out of it. Yeah, okay. You're picking the Saints for the upset. Got it. Next game, 49ers going against the Jets. I think the odds makers already have this as a no-brainer. They are giving the Jets a 13.5-point spread over the 49ers. Mitch?
Let's say what it is, what everybody's thinking. 49ers escaped with that win last week. They didn't deserve to win that game. They've only won one legit game this year, and that was against Green Bay, a rookie coach. Jets all the way in this one. Jets all the way.
Okay. Next game, Colts are going to Denver to visit the Broncos, and the Broncos are giving them an 8.5-point spread. Dean.
Well, I'm going to predict two things about this game. I'm predicting that Denver is going to win at home and cover the spread. I'm predicting next week that Mitch is going to say that he should have started Kyle Allen in this game.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to say the same thing as well.
If he starts Kyle Allen, he beats Denver by 2 touchdowns.
It's okay. He'll learn eventually. He'll pick it up. He'll hear message.
I looked at the quarterback ratings and wondered, why is he starting that guy? And I think he's looking at overall ratings, and he thinks that Jordan Love is just overall a little bit better. So I guess at this point, it's in his mind not a debate, and he's committed to starting that guy for the full season. So I'm going to say at this point he's probably not going to make that change.
Yeah. All right. Jacksonville goes to play the Packers, and they are giving the Packers 6.5 on that one. This one goes to Mitch. Yes, Mitch.
Yeah, Jaguars definitely gave me more than I wanted last week on the defensive side for sure. Offense struggles. The Packers, other than that one game against San Francisco, actually have statistically one of the best defenses in the league. And so I think the Packers are going to find a way to keep their scoring up and win this game. So I think they'll cover.
Okay. All right. Next game, Vikings And the Patriots, they are giving the Vikings 7.5 over the Patriots. Dean.
I think the Patriots will continue to play with confidence after the big win this past week. There will not be a letdown. I think they'll actually win this game. It will be an upset. I think they'll win this game at home and actually beat Minnesota.
Okay. Quick and straight to the point. Next one, Seahawks are on the road going against to play the Giants. They are giving the Seahawks 6.5. Mitch.
All right. This is my lead pipe lock of the week. Go ahead and call your friends. Take out the second mortgage. Buy that cryptocurrency. Seahawks win this game, and they're going to win it by at least 13 points.
No pressure there, huh? No pressure.
That's a bold prediction.
Yeah, no pressure, none at all. Okay, you just gave the Giants locker room fodder. So, yeah, thanks a lot.
Well, hey, I did that last week too, and they got crushed by Green Bay.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So,
I'm trying to help you out.
hey, I'll take it. I will take it. Okay. And finishing up week 6 is the Chargers going against the Rams. They are giving the Chargers 7.5. We're gonna finish this one up with Dean.
Yeah, I predict the upset here too. The Chargers are struggling and the Rams are finding new confidence, and I think we're going to see that offense will continue to do well, and this will be a win at home for the Rams.
Okay. Okay. So you're predicting the Rams over the Chargers. Ooh, upset.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. All right then. Any final words you guys want to go over as far as any of those particular games you see on the docket for this week?
I agree with Dean. I think these Rams. I think the Rams are for real. I think that offense is finally clicking for them. So, We'll see if it proves out to be true.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with the Green Bay pick as well. I think they're going to win and cover the spread as well, as Mitch said.
All right then. Sounds good. All right, Mitch, you want to take us home now?
Yeah, let's get it.